When the plane touches down and you see those very tragic situations firsthand, what was that experience like for you?
For me, it felt like this is really weird to say, but a privilege, because you are meeting people who have these experiences, who are desperate for help from the outside, and you're their messenger. And sure, there were risks in the sense that being in a war zone is risky, but I could leave. I was always very aware that I had a passport, I had a place to go, and the people whose stories you're gathering, who are trusting you to put it before people in positions of power, are just stuck, and you're it. And so I don't know. It never felt like some big burden to be witnessing, because I had the privilege of being American and being able to come in and out, and the privilege of getting to try to be a vehicle for people who just deserve better.
What was that like for you to go from and transition from being someone in the academic realm and to be a very powerful voice critiquing some of the issues in America's foreign policy choices, to actually being on the other side? What was the hardest and most surprising aspect of that journey?
Most of my work in the years previous to joining the government and joining the administration had been interviewing people who'd been in positions of power to try to reconstruct as a writer what those meetings were like, what the Situation Room was like, why they made the choices they did. So I'd done all this almost anthropological research, and next thing I'm in the Situation Room and the conversations are playing themselves out in front of me. In fact, I realized it's my turn to speak. The UN brings everybody together. Without it, we can't deal with Ebola or terrorism or climate change. All the collective action problems. But it's 70 years old. It's tired. It's acquired a lot of bad habits, and all that seems to often it feels like only new bad habits get added, and old bad habits don't get taken away because people get used to doing things a certain way. So just to bring the humanity of what we're actually working on into the UN, to puncture a little bit of the bubble and to arrest people and get them out of their automated way of doing things has been a big priority of mine just in the few years that I've been there. So we have all these Security Council meetings on ISIL, and people speak to the human consequences of ISIL, but we, for the first time, brought a woman, some of you may have heard her speak, Nadia, who had been sexually enslaved by ISIL for a year, and suddenly there was a voice and a monument to why you can never be business as usual when the stakes are this high. So that humanization is something I think I take from my journalistic days of trying to cross these divides, whether it's the antiseptic, bureaucratic divide between being in these institutions and then the real people, or just the transatlantic divide of wanting to get people in this country to feel not only empathy, but also empowered, to have a role in doing something about some of these things that are happening around the world. There is more conflict in more places, even though we don't have the existential threat that some of us, grew up with. Each one of these conflicts entails families like ours who, one day were sending their kids to school and, having weddings out in the open and not fearing for their lives or their livelihoods. And the next thing, something changes overnight. So you just have to remember, what would it like to be that person? What would you want the rules of the road to be outside? And how would you want people to process what is happening?
Do you ever sort of say to yourself, I don't know how we're going to navigate through this?
One wants to compress desperately the time, because the families are just families who want to go about their business. And it's easy to sort of say, oh, it's a civil war. But it's, men with guns and a lot of people caught in between.
If you're sort of looking at young women who are just starting out now and thinking about yourself 20, 30 years ago, what would be the one piece of advice that you would have liked to have known at that age that you think can help some young women who are now just starting their careers?
I just think the voices in one's head, one not only has those voices and has to slay, I call it the bat cave, the doubts and you got to slay the bats. But there's some assumption that I think women tend to bring more than men, that the person next to you doesn't have a bat cave, and so what you're seeing is just how somebody is living in the world. And so I think having the confidence to slay the bats, but also knowing that other people often, as you dig deeper and as you get older, I think you really realize that many people are having similar thoughts and debating with themselves. The other thing, though, because I find, particularly among those who want to make the world better and get into human rights and do public service, there's a desire, almost young people are so ambitious, and they want to fix everything at once, but they're very, very wide, and I find. And so what I often encourage them to do is know something about something. They will see the whole world like through the grain of sand, rather than trying to work at the climate organization and do this and that, but to go deep, and then that will serve you when you get out and make your choices about where you want to leave your mark. Not to specialize as such, but just to go deeper and to have confidence that you're not squandering, you're not ruling out doing other things. Life is long, but knowing one thing well ends up, I think, empowering you and giving you a set of tricks to the trade that you can apply across the board.